Hello, fellow students of anthropology. In this lesson, we'll get acquainted with the discipline of anthropology. Anthropology is the study of humans, and anthropologists are interested in what it means to be human, what makes us different, and what we have in common, both biologically and culturally. And as the only living things capable of studying ourselves, anthropologists ask some fundamental questions about our human existence. How did we become who we are today? What is our place in the world? And where are we headed? To help guide anthropological research, we have a set of overarching goals, which include understanding what makes the human species unique, understanding all of the forces that shape our experience of being human, and promoting awareness of the biocultural diversity of humans. To accomplish these goals, anthropology is traditionally divided into 5 fields, each with its own particular focus. Biological or physical anthropology, the focus in this class, is concerned with humans as biological organisms, their anatomy, genetics, and evolutionary development. Cultural anthropologists study human societies in cross-cultural perspective. For instance, all humans have the same biological needs to eat, to sleep, mate, and eliminate, yet how they go about fulfilling those needs varies widely from one culture to another, as they are linked to cultural beliefs, rituals, traditions, and customs. Cultural anthropologists study human behaviors and practices that can be observed, experienced, and discussed with the people they seek to understand through participant observation fieldwork, where the anthropologist becomes embedded in the daily life of the community they study. Archaeology is the study of past human cultures through investigation of material remains like tools, dwellings, pottery, and food processing activities. Archaeologists are also concerned with culture, but their sources of information aren't living people, but artifacts that help reveal ways of life that are no longer observable and shed light on human behavior at times when written records did not exist, providing historical context that links the past to the present. As a system of symbolic communication used only by humans and primates like chimps and gorillas that have been trained to use American Sign Language, it makes sense that anthropology would be interested in how languages develop and change across time and in different social and cultural contexts. Think about all of the new or more frequently used terms or phrases that have entered into our lexicon since COVID began. Zoom fatigue, social distancing, mask mandates, self-quarantine, to name a few. If you've ever learned or are learning a second language, then you know how language reflects how people perceive themselves and the world around them. For example, the Inuit, the indigenous peoples of Alaska, Canada, and Greenland, have 60 different terms to describe the properties of ice and snow, vital information for people living in the Arctic North. And in Munich, Germany, with its robust beer culture, there are nearly 70 different words used to describe the qualities of beer. In applied anthropology, we use all of the information, data, and knowledge gathered from the discipline to help solve human problems, including addressing the legacy of racism and colonialism across the globe that has and continues to cause so much cultural destruction, displacement, disenfranchisement, historical trauma, and the massive inequities that privilege some humans and disadvantage and harm others. Applied anthropology requires anthropologists to become active and involved in using their skills, research, and insights for improving the lives of humans. And as this quote indicates, I can hardly imagine how anthropology can be anything except applied. All of these fields have their own set of theories and methods, and there is a tendency to specialize in one area, but they are all interconnected and vital for understanding the human condition, which requires anthropologists to remain holistic. In this class, we focus on the biocultural evolution of humans, that is, humans as biological organisms, but with the influence of culture. And many different kinds of scientists contribute to the field of biological anthropology, including primatologists, paleontologists, geneticists, archaeologists, and medical doctors. And you'll find them working in a variety of contexts, whether that's studying orangutans in Borneo, fossils in Africa's Great Rift Valley, or living with Sherpas in Nepal to understand how they've adapted to high-altitude living. What unites them is a shared interest in understanding human variation and adaptation. To piece together the puzzle of our evolutionary past, we rely on specialists in these areas, And since evolutionary change is rooted in genetic change, genetics is an essential piece of this puzzle. The bones and stones of the fossil record are only one part of our story. Each one of us carries an evolutionary record in our DNA. And in order to understand how humans acquired the traits and characteristics we have today, we need to understand how genetic processes provide the raw material for natural selection and evolution to work: variation. This requires looking at patterns of inheritance and how the simple act of sexual reproduction and genetic recombination ensures that no two individuals are exactly alike, even identical twins. We also need to know how genes work and what kinds of things can influence how they function or are expressed. Genetics is also what tells us about evolutionary relationships between all living things and the biosphere of which we are all a part. For example, genetic research has revealed that humans and chimps differ by only 1% in their DNA. So does that make us 1% human? Well, there's no arguing that that's a huge 1% difference. But to put this into perspective, humans and chimps are more closely related, more genetically similar than a porpoise is to a dolphin. Which brings us to another specialized field, primatology, which is the study of the anatomy and behavior of non-human primates in both wild and captive contexts. Studying our primate relatives is useful for comparative analysis to shed light on human biological and social development, including insights into social intelligence, complex social relationships and behaviors that involve cooperation, problem solving, parenting, and sexuality. Reconstructing the ancestry of humans means examining the direct physical evidence of our evolutionary past preserved in the fossil record. Paleoanthropologists search for, excavate, and study fossilized remains that uncover new hominid ancestors and relatives or add to existing specimens. In either case, these discoveries are constantly revising the human family tree. And since we deal with both fossilized skeletal remains and need to understand how anatomical adaptations and features tell us about behavior, a solid understanding of the skeleton, or osteology, is needed. What do the grooves and marks on bone tell us about muscle use and locomotion? How do we distinguish between human and non-human skeletons? Osteology helps us answer these questions. But for even more detail about individuals, forensic anthropologists have valuable skills to lend in the analysis of skeletal remains and give us information about age, sex, ancestry, stature, the circumstances surrounding death, and any evidence of disease. What I love about anthropology is that regardless of your major, your professional goals, or your personal interests, anthropology has something to offer us all, because chances are you're going to be living with, studying with, working with, and interacting with other humans. Anthropology provides a valuable toolkit for understanding humans and their behavior in a variety of contexts. Now more than ever, we need a holistic perspective on the human experience and the complex web of the interrelationships and intersectionalities that shape it. Now more than ever, we need to understand humanity in all its variations and complexity, whether that's in the workplace, at school, and in any context. This is what is meant by a holistic perspective. But we also benefit from an evolutionary perspective, not just in a biological context, but in all domains of human life, political, economic, and social. So why study ourselves? Because understanding our human nature helps us to understand our place in nature. It also forces us to be aware of how we are shaping the world around us as we've planted, paved, grazed, and built on much of the Earth's surface. Our human activities have created such major and indelible changes in the soil, the oceans, and the atmosphere that many scientists are proposing we define a new geological epoch or chapter in Earth's history called the Anthropocene to emphasize our imprint on the planet. An anthropological perspective and an evolutionary kin-centric worldview helps us to confront and actively engage with crucial issues facing our world. So to rephrase the questions anthropology asks that we learned at the beginning of this lesson, by knowing where we've been and how we got here, we can shape where we are going. As humans, we are in the unique and powerful position of being able to shape our own future, the future of other living things, and the planet we all share. And with great power comes great responsibility. From the climate crisis, the COVID crisis, an extinction crisis, and a crisis of belonging. We need, now more than ever, to critically reflect on our relationship to the natural world, to other living things, and to each other. We are still evolving, still adapting, as a species, as a society, and as individuals. Anthropology helps us to better understand what it means to be human so that we can choose to be better humans. This is what anthropology is all about.
It was so new.